Hello and welcome back to my channel, and in this video we're going to be looking at scouting/opposition reports. So as I've alluded to in previous videos, if you are working as an analyst within a football club, I know a lot of my videos are centered around football, but this goes for other sports too, so you will probably have to do or find yourself doing a lot of opposition analysis. So that basically means, so whoever you're playing next, you want to analyse the opponent so you're in the best position to hopefully try and beat them. So obviously every team's doing this, so it's about the small edges that you can find. So it does depend on how much manpower you've got and how many hours you can dedicate to the opposition analysis. So some teams, you'll find tend to look at the previous 2 or 3 games for their next opponent. So what that means is if you're playing Liverpool on Saturday, let's say, then you would look to create a presentation or a report on Liverpool, focusing and looking at Liverpool's previous 3 games to when they play you. So you can start to understand how they play, what their threats are, etc., etc. So in most cases, this is delivered as a presentation. So I do have some notes down here on my laptop, so I'm gonna basically give some indicators as to what would be included in this presentation. Okay, so the first thing we're going to focus on is the formations and lineup. So quite basic really. So in terms of those 3 previous games, we're going to want to see how Liverpool lined up. If it is, let's say we are playing Liverpool. So what was the Liverpool formation for those 3 games and who played basically? Is that consistent throughout all of the games that they've played? Do they tend to bring on a particular sub at a certain time? Some clubs do that. Maybe certain players only last 60 or 70 minutes. Maybe someone is coming back from injury, so you might want to research that. You will also look at, has there been any suspension? So maybe someone's not been playing for the last 2 games or 1 game or whatever because they were suspended. So you need to know that and be prepared if they're going to be included in the squad against you. So that's in terms of how they've set up previously. Do they set up the same against any team? For example, some teams play maybe a slightly different formation if they're playing someone at the top of the league to if they're playing someone at the bottom of the league. So you might want to kind of look at that. And also teams will set up differently home and away. So it's good to get a mixture of the 2 if you can. So how they've set up, do they change that during the game? And again, certain teams have, I mentioned just a second ago in terms of the subs. So a certain team might have a sub that they tend to bring on if they are needing a goal in the last 10 minutes, and that sub comes on and changes the whole team's formation, for example. So just bear that in mind. So kind of go back 2, 3, 4, 5 games if possible. As many, obviously, the more you do, the more kind of research you can actually collect on the team. So that's the first thing in terms of formation. So let's move on to the next aspect. Okay, so the next aspect of the report or presentation could be how they are in possession. So again, let's go back to the Liverpool example. What are Liverpool like in possession? So for example, how do they like to play? Do they play out from the back? Do they play through the thirds? Are they a long ball team, for example? How do they create their chances? So if you've gone through the previous 3 games, you'll have gone through them. Where did the goals come from? Did they tend to score a lot of goals from crosses from the right, for example, or long balls or passes in behind? So those are the kind of things that you're going to want to look at. So in terms of how they score the goals, how they create the chances, where do they come from? Do they come from a particular player? Is there a certain player that's dangerous, for example? And do they favour a side of the pitch? Some teams are more weighted to the left-hand side because they have a brilliant player on the left-hand side, and they'll always try and go down that particular side. So you've got to kind of look at that as well. So what are they like in possession? And that goes for, when they are deep, are they happy to keep the ball at the back and kind of be patient and make chances? Are they more direct? And what, as I've said, where do they get their goals and create their chances from? Okay, so the next logical step after the in possession analysis is what they are like out of possession. So again, basically just the opposite. So you'll be looking at the times when Liverpool are not in possession of the ball. What do they do? So do they press high? Yes, probably. So are they quite an aggressive team where they want to win the ball back immediately after losing it? Or do they tend to just sit back and kind of relax, get back into their shape, which some teams do? So again, that's something that you want to look at. And that again might differ depending on who they are playing. They might press high against certain teams and maybe not so against other teams. So in terms of the pressing as well, there's other things to look for. So some teams press on certain triggers. So maybe the ball goes out to the fullback from the centre half, and that might be a trigger for them to go. So little things like that you're going to notice. If you're watching these 3 to 5 games, you need to obviously pay attention to what's kind of going on basically all the time. So when they've got the ball and when they haven't got the ball, and what tendencies do they tend to have. And again, just on the opposite of in possession. So you're going to look at the chances that Liverpool have conceded. So all the teams that basically have scored or had shots against Liverpool in those last 3 games, where did they come from? So, you know, they're, for example, are they coming down the left? So against Trent Alexander-Arnold, is he too high and he's causing people to get in behind, for example? So that would be a trend that maybe if you've found a lot of chances come from that, then maybe you can exploit that when you play them as well. So that's kind of the in possession and the out of possession things that you will hopefully look at when you're doing your report. Okay, so before we move on to the next one, I do have a favour to ask. So apparently the best way to get more subscribers is to ask you to subscribe. So if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Give the video a like if you find this content useful. As I mentioned before, there's loads of videos on this channel in terms of how to get jobs in sports analysis and also interviews with other professionals working within the sector. So loads of value to be had. It doesn't cost you a penny to subscribe. So please do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Okay, so let's get back into this report slash presentation. So the next thing that we're going to focus on, so we've done the formations, the lineups, what's expected, we've done in possession, we've done out of possession, we're going to look at set plays. So as you know, set plays are a big part of any football match with, you know, maybe a third of goals coming from set plays, for example. So you're going to be looking at the corners, attacking free kicks, long throw-ins, etc. So few things to consider when you're looking at these. So do they have a particular person which will take these, for example? Do they prefer in-swingers? Do they prefer out-swingers? Do they have certain set-piece plans where when they've got an attacking one, for example, do they set up in a particular way? Have they got any funky routines that they do? When they are defending set plays, do they defend zonally? Are they man-to-man? Is it a mixture of the two? And again, this goes for long throws as well. So again, long throws kind of a very useful tool for some teams. So how do they defend against them? Do they struggle? If they do, maybe you can exploit that again. So that would be attacking and defending set plays to kind of see how they kind of manage with the both of them. And again, maybe you can throw some stats in there too. If a team has conceded, you know, the most goals in the league from corners, that's an important stat to know. If it, you know, if it's over a number of games, and maybe that is something that you can put pressure on. Maybe the goalkeeper doesn't tend to kind of deal with crosses very well. So that's something that you'd want to know going into that particular game. So after the set plays, we're going to then probably focus a little bit around some individual players. So you might, as I say, this could be a report, it could be a presentation. So sometimes when you do a report, you might actually give the information to your players for their opposition person that they'll be playing against. For example, your fullback might get information on the winger, for example, of the other team, so they know what to expect. But if you can kind of focus on some specific players for Liverpool, let's say, are there any danger men that we need to know of? Again, Liverpool's not the greatest example because they're very well-known players. So, you know, but if you're doing a report for a team that you don't know so well, but you've used the time and you've looked into them over the last 3 to 5 games, you should be able to see which of the players are maybe more important to that team. For example, you know, is there a certain player that takes all of the set plays? Is there a certain player that tends to create most of the chances or has scored most of the goals? Even, is there a certain player that is prone to mistakes, for example? So maybe they're not so good with the feet, maybe a centre half, for example, they're not so good under pressure with the ball at the feet. So maybe that is something that you can exploit, win the ball off them and obviously score a goal. So little things like that. So tendencies as to what you can expect from certain players. Does a player like to cut in all the time onto his left foot, for example? Maybe someone is known to be quite rash and they get booked a lot, or they're prone to get sent off. Something again you can exploit. Maybe you can wind that player up or whatever and get him into the book early on, which would be an advantage for you going into the rest of the game. So just to summarise so far, we have got the formations and the lineups, we've got the in possession, we've got the out of possession, set plays and the players, and then you're probably going to want to wrap it with a summary. So any other tendencies that you've noticed you can put in here, and again you can pop some stats in here as well. So if you do have stats on the opposition team, whether they, like I said, basically to back up what you've already said. So if they are tending to go down the left hand side and they create the most of the chances from crosses from the left, then obviously include that as well. And so it's just good to kind of have a summary and maybe some indication and some pointers of how you can then utilize the information that you've included in your report and how that can help you obviously prepare for what you guys can do going into that particular game. So I hope that video has been helpful. So again, this is sort of a scouting / opposition report. If it has done, as I say, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching and have a great day.